Thinking about an unstable culture, I think there's the employee view and there's the employer view. There's what I'm feeling as an employee to me, and there's what I'm seeing if I'm in leadership, if I'm an HR leader. I think those conversations look a little different.
Yeah, I think too with that, it's a matter of you don't have aligned interests. When the company succeeds, employees don't feel like they succeed. And the inverse can be true too, is you can have employees thriving financially, at least with income, but the business is suffering. So that alignment, I think, is super important. And I'll also say there's a higher risk when there's what we would call a hybrid pay band, where there's salaried high wage earners, and then there's hourly lower wage earners. That creates a lot of natural issues.
Yeah. And I mean, if we're talking about metrics specifically, if employees, like if you're a leader, if your employees aren't participating in their 401k, if they're not participating in other elective benefits, but that cost them money, like things like their HSA, other insurance offerings, we're not seeing high participation in those, we might have signs of financial instability among our population.
Yeah, what's interesting about that is companies spend so much money on benefits. And so not only is it bad when someone doesn't use it,
right? Yeah.
Like it feels like a waste of money, but then someone doesn't truly understand how they're really being compensated. Mm-hmm. If you pay someone well, and then all of their benefits stacked on top of that make an incredible package, and then they don't use those benefits, then it's not an incredible package.
Yeah.
So that is problematic. It's hugely problematic. And to your point, it's actually a financial literacy issue.
Right. Yeah. I hadn't even fully considered it in that context. As an employee may feel undercompensated, but is it because they don't maybe understand or utilize other benefits part of their total comp package?
Yeah, the perfect example of that is an aggressive stretch match, right, in a 401k. Yeah, let's say if you put in 8%, we put in 4%. And someone goes, well, I don't want to put in 8%. I'm not going to do that.
Right.
And then the outcome of that is that they don't utilize it. They don't get that 12% contribution. I did the math for you. And then that is a package that is not acknowledged as healthy.
Employees benefit, in my opinion, from workplace financial wellness programs in improving their financial literacy. So financial literacy, my favorite definition of financial literacy, financial knowledge, your financial skills, your financial self-efficacy. And generally speaking, we're lacking as a populace in one of those three areas. And so when an employer offers a financial wellness program, they give that opportunity to hone in on whether it's that knowledge, it's those skills, or it's just, I need somebody to help me be a champion as I improve my financial wellness.
Yeah, I think culturally we've shifted too. Decades ago, it was this, go ahead and make bad financial decisions so you'll work harder.
Yeah.
And that's the stickiness of employment. I think it's completely on its head now. I think it is, financial wellness suggests a person should get their financial life in order so then they can live a life professionally that they can be proud of and that can feel fulfilling. The idea that someone has to leave a job because of their finances is something that shouldn't be. And I think financial wellness acknowledges that and improves it. Financial stress and performance, in my mind, are so linked. And while it's neat to wax poetic about how others deal with this, let me speak about how I deal with this. When I'm experiencing financial stress, I am at my worst professionally. 100% my worst. My creativity is stifled. I think myopically. I don't take the right risks. My sleep is terrible. My nutrition is off. It is the catalyst of disaster for me. And so I know that, I feel that, and I'll be very frank, that is why I started this company. Because when others feel like that, I know they can't be the person that they often think about being.
And what's really interesting about that is that you're a personal finance expert. We're personal finance experts. So if you're saying that when I feel stressed, when I feel financial stress, I'm not performing, how is the average employee navigating that space? Because they don't have the financial literacy that comes with our career path. Most of us don't know a whole lot about personal finances, and we love around here to say what we know about personal finance is caught and not taught. And so if you weren't formally taught about personal finances, how are you supposed to show up and bring your best person to work?
Yeah, you and I also share a trait financially is we're vigilant,
Yeah.
right? Our vigilance is rewarded with anxiety,
Yeah.
and I would say that triggers a fight or flight response in us. And for others that struggle with finances, if they don't have the right level of literacy or acumen, that is never triggered and they can never adjust. And then it's like this silent killer, right? I don't think you and I will ever find ourselves surprised financially where something has happened for years and then you and I go, oh, like that will never happen. It's a slow drip for us right now. Unfortunately, others who don't pay attention to this stuff, it's gonna be a surprise of their life. What? I don't have a pension? Kristen, you know the number of people who think they have a pension that don't have a pension because their grandparents had a pension and their parents had a pension? They just assume they have a pension. They don't have a pension. They don't even participate in the 401k. They literally have nothing. That is so common, and it's about not being vigilant.
And it goes back to that workplace financial wellness thing that we just talked about, which is that if you don't have access to those resources, you don't know what you don't know. And so someone's just going to work, they're doing their job and thinking like, hey, like the future is going to come and the future will happen. And then you're exactly right. It's like, am I taken by surprise?
Yeah, the compensation treadmill is this idea that the only way a person improves their finances is by getting paid more, right? And I actually think the opposite is true. I believe that people can be taken further away from their financial goals every time they get a pay increase, unless they're intentional about what they do with that pay increase. So you have a person who is naturally wanting more. I mean, that's great. I love it. And they get more and they increase their lifestyle and their actual stability doesn't get any better. That's a compensation treadmill. So if a company's solution to their financial wellness issues is we pay great, that ain't it. That ain't it, because you will never get off of that. It is a wild goose chase. You're giving resources to the unresourceful and you're wasting money.
So if I'm understanding correctly, the compensation treadmill, you're saying that by not breaking dependence on your income at your current level, that when you receive additional income, you're not a good steward with those dollars necessarily. And so if we're not into, this goes back to this lack of awareness that we've kind of honed in on throughout this discussion, is if I don't know where I'm at, when I receive more, it feels like a good thing. Everybody wants to make more money, but it can actually hinder my long-term financial health.
Yeah, that's said much better than I said it, right? It's this idea of if I have a level of stability and I get more money, and that more money doesn't create a higher level of stability, it can create more dependence on more income. And that is the opposite of stability. Stability to me is a consistent breaking of dependency on income. And that requires intentionality. And I hate to say the average person can't do that. The average person can't do that. And that's why a company, if they're wise, they arm their people with this level of guidance.
As a millennial, I feel like there is this continued pressure from my generation, from younger generations, for employers to, I don't know if I want to say care, because I think some of us know that our employers care, but to put in that extra effort to me as a person and not just me as an employee. And understanding that if I'm not able to show up to work as my best me, I can't be the best employee for that employer either. And I think that recognizing at the employer level that investing in me as a person, I think that's something that millennials and Gen Z, I think that's something we push for. And I think that's kind of the undertone to that.
It should be abundantly clear that I am not a millennial or Gen Z. So I offer my comments with respect, right? I believe that appropriately, millennials and Gen Z are much better at refusing to just treat symptoms, and they are much more willing to go deeper and try to treat root causes. I think, generations above that are just as likely to just say, like, just make me feel better, as opposed to like solving the problem. Story time. So once I went to a dermatologist because I was like getting hives or something. and this is money related. And the dermatologist said, "Oh, here, I'll give you this antihistamine, and you'll be fine." And I was like, "Neat, but why am I getting hives?" And she was like, "I don't know, but if you take this antihistamine, you'll be fine." And it disturbed me. I still ended up taking the antihistamine, never figured out I was fine. I'm fine, everyone's fine. But I don't think a millennial or a Gen Z would accept that on any human level. I think they would say, "No, I'm not doing that." And I think that's amazing, and I think it's great, and I think it's that spirit that an employer has to lean into and to stoke and say, "Hey, there's some really good qualities with this. How can it translate into the work we're doing?" When I think about AI and how we use it in financial wellness, I think about it like when you go to get blood work, right? So maybe something's wrong, maybe something's not wrong. They run a blood panel on you. You get all this information about your blood chemistry, and you're like, "Hey, my cholesterol is this. I otherwise would not have known that." Or, these triglycerides, if that's a thing, are this. And now I need to do something. I think with AI and financial data, we can do the same thing. We can detect things that you maybe sensed or you didn't sense. Now we know what to do about it. And more importantly, we know how to talk to you about it because we've trained the model to talk to you the way you want to be talked to. And that is exciting. And I'll be honest, the other side of this too is AI or algorithms have been working against us for years. Amazon has been working against us financially for years. This is not conspiratorial. This is, hey, other people bought this. That is putting a dent in my wallet. Now with AI and financial wellness, what we're saying is we're able to advocate to keep your money, not to advocate to spend your money. And that's a pretty big difference.
Student loans, we have spent the last 3 years in this just tornado of what is the student loan landscape. Repayment, not repayment, repayment, not repayment, forgiveness, no, the Supreme Court. It just seems like the news cycle is never ending. And I think my prediction for student loans, whether this is exactly the intention with the question or not, is that there will be more confusion and not less. And whether I think that might be because of an upcoming election, or because I think that, we see these statistics about how many millions of borrowers miss their first student loan payment. All of those things can be true, but the reality is that the landscape is becoming more fluid and it's becoming more flexible. And what that does is it leads to more borrower confusion because it feels like we never know the rules that we're playing by.
I can't say it any better, right? I am not a cynical person. 2024 in student loans will be about last-ditch efforts to get student loan forgiveness before November. I think that's going to define this year. Some will be successful, some will be unsuccessful, but ultimately, here's who suffers. The average consumer with student loans, because they're not going to know to care or not. They're confused. And beyond that, college prices will just keep going up. There's no incentive for them to reset. And you've said it all along. If we attacked the student loan problem without attacking the cost of college problem at the same time, we're going to end up in this exact same situation again.
Yeah, that's the frustrating thing about the student loan landscape in general is you talked before about, are we treating a symptom or are we treating a root problem? And it just feels like we continue to attack this symptom, which is the burden that is student loan repayment. And while that symptom is collectively plaguing us, and that's not an opinion, that's a fact, is that when we look at millions of people who didn't make their first student loan payment on time, we're talking about a national issue.
Not to go too dystopian here, but the more the average consumer struggles with housing costs and medical costs, that's the contributes to the fact that they can't contribute to college savings, right? So if we're having interest rates sky high and inflation sky high, we're talking about middle school students right now who their parents can't save the way maybe a half a generation ago could because of cost of living. And so the student loan problem actually is on the cusp of getting 2 to 3 times worse than it's ever been before. And we're all just looking at the one now going, this is untenable. wait for 5 to 8 years where the impact of inflation and a high cost of living has rendered student loans absolutely necessary to attend college.
The dangerous thing I think about this narrative, though, is that if we get to a place where we think that the problem is so big that on the individual level, we can't address it, the reality is that you have to know your own personal financial reality and recognize that there are consequences for non-payment, late payment, inability to repay that liability. And the unfortunate thing is, while those who are making those decisions continue to argue back and forth, if you will, you still have to figure out a way to make it.
Yeah, we observe around here. And I think I use that verb because we don't judge around this. We find people who find student loan forgiveness that didn't know they had it. And it's their lack of literacy around that, understandably, that holds them back. Because if we can go in and get things wiped out through the federal programs and change their life, unless they met the moment with us or someone like us, then their life will stay on that negative path. And so that's what's so challenging about this student loan confusion is that, it happens every week around here. Someone is surprised to learn that they have tens of thousands of dollars of forgiveness, their cash flow changes, and in some instances they receive rebate checks. And that's wild. That's confusion. When your net worth shifts by 6 figures overnight and you didn't even know it was possible, that's the essence of confusion. I think as companies go to evaluate, do you adopt another benefit? And this one happens to be called financial wellness. So often you say, okay, well, how are we going to get our money back on this? How are we going to get a return on this investment? It's a tough measure. It's just simply a tough measure, but here's where you're likely to see an impact. You're likely to see fewer healthcare claims related to stress. You are likely to see less turnover because people aren't leaving their job to solve their financial problems. And you're likely to see higher levels of productivity. And while all those things can be metric driven, it's hard to acknowledge the delta that exists between acting and not acting. But they are in fact real and important to consider.
Financial counseling is necessary because in the society that we live in, what we know about money is caught and not taught. And financial counseling spends so much time helping people understand where they are with their journey to being financially literate. We're talking financial skills, financial knowledge, financial self-efficacy. And we have to, a lot of the time, financial counseling, the reality of the work that we do here is that we spend so much time undoing what the things that we've spent largely ignoring because the space can feel so intimidating, unapproachable, inaccessible.
Yeah, I think anyone who's going through therapy or counseling is just trying to understand themselves more, right? Even think about the concept of marriage counseling. There's a negative connotation to it. Why? Why would you not view that as just a wonderful thing that you're investing in your relationship and in the future of your relationship? So I think if you think about financial counseling, it feels like something it's court ordered or something like that, when in fact it's not. It is an investment of understanding, and it doesn't have to be super formal either. It can just be getting someone to understand their money personality and how they react to certain financial guidance.
I have a hypothesis about the future of financial counseling, and there's this emerging world of financial therapy, which is this really wonderful marriage of, if it's marriage and family counseling and financial counseling, and this subsector of financial therapy is really emerging. And I think what we haven't quite figured out yet collectively is the best way to kind of categorize that and then pay for it. And I think collectively, when we find out who's going to fund this? Is it going to be my employer? Is it going to be part of my healthcare benefits? I believe that more people will proactively seek what I would call financial therapy, because so many of our personal conflicts are issues like we talked about, our stress factors. So much of that is personal finance related. I think we're going to continue to see this need for people who can speak to you in the financial therapy space.
Yeah, I think people are financially successful when they stop thinking about money as a mathematical problem to solve. I think it's the intersection of math and behavior. And it's acknowledging the behavior is a part of it that starts to get into therapy, and it starts to get into counseling, and it starts to get an employer acknowledging that, hey, math ain't gonna do it. Math is not gonna help us accomplish our goals. I'm a big proponent of mathematics. I hope you know this, but it's not enough. It's not enough.
Money is not math. And the sooner that we collectively or continually just keep reminding people of that, the better we will be across the board when it comes to our personal finances. 401k loans are this really tricky thing because the narrative for so long has been, it's my money. Like, I'm going to use my money to solve my problems because it makes sense for me and my household, and I'm going to pay myself back. This my language in this space will just become this really dangerous thing. And the unfortunate nature of it is that you're borrowing money from future you because you're dependent on your income in a lot of cases. And so 401k loans, while I have so much empathy and I understand where people are coming from when they decide to take a 401k loan, it's something that we really want to be a true, in the truest sense of the term, break glass in case of emergency.
On a higher level, I think they are the preeminent sign of a bad financial culture, which feels really judgmental. If you have a lot of student loan, or 401k loans, it feels like, oh, the person's making a mistake. Maybe they are, maybe not, but from a company standpoint, if you've got a lot of people taking 401k loans, you need help as an organization, because you're going to see some negative ramifications for that, including people never retiring, and then morale dumps. So it is a massive sign of trouble.